Welcome. I'm your host, Cindy Watson. As always, it is so great to have you here. And today we're talking with Beverly Williams about how to thrive in employment negotiations and beyond. So, welcome, Beverly. It's so great to have you here.
Cindy, I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
Oh, I can't wait to roll up my sleeves. You and I have, there's so much synchronicity there. And for those who don't know Beverly, she's a multifaceted labor and employment expert. So you can see why I was immediately interested. And she's been described as a cross between Judge Judy, Whoopi Goldberg, and Jean Chatsky or Jean Chatsky. I hear everybody pronounce it differently, which is really attracted my attention. And Beverly's got really eclectic work experience in corporate and government, nonprofit organizations. So she comes with a lot of skills, a lot of training, and a lot of different perspectives. And that sort of wealth of experience and talent lets her engage media audiences in thought-provoking exchanges about employment and career matters. So I thought we could roll up our sleeves and dig in. So I'd love to hear first, Beverly, how did you come to do this type of work?
Well, I've always wanted to be an attorney, and although I didn't start out on that career path, I was fortunate enough to get a Ford Fellowship to attend the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill to focus on a master's in public administration. But after I graduated, I worked for a large urban school district, and because of some of my background, they asked me to assume responsibility for labor relations. And
Okay.
that's how I became interested in pursuing an employment and labor specialty. And
Mhm.
that's what I do now, in addition to
Yes.
alternate dispute resolution.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect. I can't wait to sort of talk about some of your skills on negotiating that. And one thing let's talk about sort of the elephant in the room. Like in the wake of COVID, we're hearing a lot of debates about, who holds the leverage, if you will. Post COVID, everybody's talking about the great resignation. It was like, oh, the balance of power shifted to employees. And as quick as that happened, everybody's like, oh, there's going to be a big recession and balance of power shifted the other way. I'd love your thoughts on just what, if anything, has changed in the employment scheme and who holds the leverage, or is that the wrong question?
Cindy, quite frankly, I'd like to believe that what has changed is that employees and employers have become more collaborative.
Mm,
That's what I'd like to believe.
yeah,
What I know to be the truth is that management, employers have leverage.
yeah,
Employees have some leverage. They can leave.
yeah,
With the employment at will, I don't know whether it's you have that in Canada, but in the United States, either party
yeah,
can leave. You can be an employee can be discharged, and an employee can leave, can
yeah,
resign with or without notice.
yeah,
Now, as long as there's no illegalities,
yeah,
the employer is okay. Say goodbye. I don't like it. You have on a pink shirt. I don't like the pink shirt or a
yeah,
pink blouse. I don't like pink.
yeah,
That's not actionable.
yeah,
But to think for employees to think that they have leverage over employers, excuse me, unless they have some unique skill, and forgive me if this sounds inappropriate, but unless you're curing cancer,
yeah,
you might stop and think, can I be replaced?
yeah,
Is my skill set that unique that I have leverage?
yeah.
And my experience has been employees don't have as much leverage as perhaps they and the media have led them to believe that they have.
Yeah, and I loved your first comment about that collaboration because, as you know, that's sort of at the heart of the art of feminine negotiation, as I call it. This, like, I would love to imagine a world, and like you, I hope we're moving to that world where we get away from ideas about power over each other and who has the power over the other and start looking for how can we have power with? How can we work together? How can we make, in employment and beyond? And I know you've got a book out there called Your GPS to Employment Success. And
Yes, I do.
I love that. It educates readers, about how to up level their career advancement. So I'd love if you could share some tips on, I guess, to start, how to prepare for that job search.
Well, especially now, and I'm so pleased that more people are talking about mental health looking for a job regardless of what the job market is like, whether the economy is robust or stagnant, it can be a very, it can be a challenging experience. There may be rejection. There
Yeah.
may be a lot of work that's entailed in getting the job that you want. Even if you've acquired all the skill sets that people say you should acquire, education,
Yeah.
training, all of that, there are other people out there who are doing the same thing, taking the same requisite steps in furtherance of finding the job of their dreams. And you need to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Yeah.
You need to establish a routine, you know, get up at at the same time every day, have a healthy breakfast, don't eat junk. I mean,
Yeah.
you can go off the wagon every once in a while.
Yeah.
And when I say wagon, I mean alcohol too, but you don't want
Yeah.
to consume large quantities of alcohol while you're trying to find a job, because it shows
Yeah.
on your face, in your demeanor. You'll be listless.
Yeah. That's true.
So you
Oh,
want the right mindset, you want the right physical ability, you want to move forward in a positive frame of mind.
mm,
That's important. And you can do that, but you have to be focused on doing it. I say train like an Olympian,
yes. I
you
love
know?
that. And I love that you're talking about mental health and that mindfulness piece, right? I mean, I often
Yes.
say our first and most important negotiation is negotiating our own mindset. So I love that you're tackling that. And I assume that means Count Chocula is out for breakfast.
Well, it works for some people, and in moderation, you can have almost anything.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to regulate.
Yeah.
And if I had known, the one of my dear friends was a peer reviewer on my book, and he was very helpful in everything I did in connection with the book, and trying to educate people about how to move through the employment process.
Yeah.
He committed suicide.
Oh no.
And if I
Oh,
had
sorry.
I I just regret not devoting more in the book to,
Yeah.
mental health and preparing yourself. But I had page limitations. So,
Yeah.
and I probably would not have been able to do more. But I think going forward, I will be more focused on
Yeah.
that aspect of it because it's critical.
Well, that could be your next book, frankly. And thank you for speaking to the elephant in the room, because I do think we need to start talking more. We need to start normalizing the conversation around it, getting rid of some of that stigma so people feel more comfortable addressing mental health issues and getting, the help that they need. And I know one of the things you talk about a lot as well is you've got sort of some secret sauce, if you will, on how to ace the job interview. So once you've sort of taken care of yourself and got your mindset on track for that job search, what are some secrets you've got on how to ace that job interview when you get it?
Well, I don't know whether it's a secret, but I realized as I was writing the book that when you look for a job, you rarely think about the employer and the employer's needs
Yeah.
beyond the job description.
Yes.
You think, I need a job, I need to make money, I have to pay my bills, I have to pay my car note, I have to pay my rent, I want to go on vacation, I need a job, I need a job. I realized that we need to create win-win situations.
Yeah.
What do you need from an employer? But in order to get what you need from an employer, you need to identify what the employer needs.
Yeah.
And during the course of a phone interview or an in-person or a Zoom interview, you need to be able to convince whoever you're talking to that you can add value. And by adding value, that means making your supervisor's job easier, by not having to be micromanaged,
Yeah.
by completing jobs on time, assignments, projects, by working well in a team, by being a person that people want to work with. And those are some of the things that we should convey when we're in a job interview. And the other thing is, you don't always know when you're being evaluated
Yeah.
for perhaps the job interview.
Yeah.
You may be at a charity event with your family. You may be at a sports event with one of your parents. You can be anywhere, or the grocery store or a department store. And you're standing there, say, with your parent or with your friend, and you see one of your parents' friends, and they ask, "Oh, hi, so and so, how are you doing? What are you up to?"
Yeah.
You say, "I'm looking for a job.
Yeah.
You know, I just graduated, or I graduated from high school, I graduated from college, I completed my training as an apprentice," whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking for a job. You know, I'm a hard worker, I'm always on time, and anything you can think of that might be helpful, I would
Yeah.
truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they say, "Okay, I will." And the next thing you do is, when you get home, you send the person an email, an e-card, or an email saying, "It was so nice seeing you.
Yeah.
Thank you for agreeing to help me." Do you see what I'm saying? You
Totally. And it's interesting because these are skills that I think that this next generation have lost. So I thank you for reminding us of that. And I want to circle back and put a pin in how, when you started that, talking about find out what the employer needs. Because, I often have my clients do a brag list, but I make don't go in just reciting everything you've done, because they're really not going to care unless you can show how it directly relates to better outcomes
exactly.
for them. And I'll just say for our listeners too, don't be afraid to get curious. Like, right in the interview, say, what is the most important skill that you value in this workplace? What are you, and then finesse your answer to show how you meet that. I think that's such great advice.
Absolutely.
Beverly.
And they want you to do that. They
Yeah.
want you to ask questions, but it should be questions that you genuinely want answered.
Yeah.
It's not, "Well, what do I have to do to get a promotion?" That's not the question to ask.
Yeah.
"How
Yeah.
much money will I make?" That's not the question to ask. When I say ask questions, as you said, find out, you have to research the company. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and I saw this on a PBS show that I happened on a couple years ago, these creative managers in a creative environment were being interviewed, and they were talking about interviewing candidates for in positions that they have. And one woman said, if she didn't get a thank you note within 24 hours, it
Wow.
didn't matter how well the person performed during the interview. they, they were it was a non-starter. Their
Wow.
application, their resume went in the trash.
That
I
is
was
good to
shocked.
know.
I was
Yeah.
shocked. I had never heard that before.
Yeah. That is great advice.
So
And
whoever you talk to, whoever you meet, send them a thank you.
yeah, I love that advice. And it's such a simple thing, right? But it does, you're right. I'm thinking, on my own, as an employer with my own law firm for many years, that's something that always stands out for me when somebody has that follow up right away and thanks for the interview, and it shows
Yes.
that enthusiasm and excitement, that really stands out. Now, once they get the job, I mean, workplace conflict sadly arises. What advice do you have for resolving workplace conflict, especially as somebody who does a lot of alternative dispute resolution? I'd love your thoughts on that.
In the workplace, I think, and I've used this personally because, the workplace is a microcosm of the world,
Yeah.
the world we live in.
Yeah.
I start with myself. Am I to blame for this kind of reaction? Okay, because see, I'm a very direct person. I don't all I'm not always mindful that everybody is not, the thing that comes to mind is Jack Nicholson, "You can't handle the truth."
Yeah.
If, if I'm telling the truth, and I don't
Yeah.
mean the truth as I see it, I mean factual, it's
Yeah.
fact based. If
Yeah.
I'm telling the truth, it's okay.
Yeah.
But Jack Nicholson was right. Everyone doesn't want to hear the truth
That is
for
so true.
whatever reason. So, I try to be objective about my contribution to the discord, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, so you may have said something they didn't like. Uh, in one instance, I invited the woman out to lunch and
Yeah.
we talked. And in fact, we became very good friends.
Yeah.
But everyone, that doesn't work with everyone.
Yeah.
But like I said, start with yourself and
I love that.
ask if you are contributing in some way, if there's something that you could have done differently,
Yeah.
and how to proceed going forward. You can just ask the person, we got off on the wrong foot. Can we, have coffee in the cafeteria or
Yeah.
before or after work, and see if we can find common ground, that so we can move forward less acrimoniously.
It's beautiful. Well, and I want to put a pin in a couple of things you've said already that are brilliant. I mean, one, because we don't talk about that enough and we're not taught that.
So,
Own your part, consider your part, right? So I think that's really beautiful advice. We're always so quick with the blame game, right? Especially when there's conflict. Of course, it's got to be the other person.
absolutely.
Keep your ego out of it. Don't be so attached to being right. And the other thing you said that I think is worth really putting a pin in is about meeting off site. I think we saw, I have a model, I call it the 5 W's, and the third W is where. Get intentional about where you have the conversation. Having it in the workplace where the conflict arose isn't always the best idea. Get off
Yeah.
site, get somewhere relaxed, choose the ambiance you want, with intention. And I love when you said
Yes.
about that curiosity piece again, like ask questions, make
Yes.
it about the other person. I think that they're all really some great advice, Beverly. So thank you for that.
And
And I
one
know,
reason
yeah,
not to have the discussion take place on at the work site is because people will see.
yes, yes,
And you talk, the person you're talking to has been talking. And so it's like people are waiting to see, are they going to start? Is there going to be a shouting match? It's better to take it off site for that reason alone.
yeah. Yeah, that's such great advice. Now, obviously, I have a soft spot having practiced sort of trade union labor law for over 30 years, and I know you do a lot of that. I'd love if you could chat for a bit just about how you prepare for labor negotiations.
When I started negotiating labor agreements, I wasn't an attorney. I was the executive director of labor relations for a large urban school district. And my staff, they weren't attorneys either.
Yeah.
And none of us really had practical labor relations
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But I had an excellent staff. They were all very highly motivated, intelligent people who wrote well and who I could trust with anything.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge, don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
the labor unions in that I was responsible for, they were not easy. There were building trades, there were SEIUs, the
Yeah.
Service Employee
Yeah.
International, operating engineers. But surprisingly, the building trades union people who were older gentlemen, they were just a joy to deal with.
Interesting.
Absolutely. The carpenters, plumbers, iron worker, just wonderful people to do business with.
Yeah.
And even the operating engineer president that I negotiated against was just very professional and
Yeah.
easygoing. Some of the other ones, the younger ones, and when I say young, they weren't that young.
Yeah.
They had, at one of them especially, was such a misogynist
Yeah.
that, and it was interesting because they all knew my father, because my father was a labor person,
Yeah.
and it didn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if my father knew you were treating me this
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to tell you what he would do to
Yeah.
you.
Well, it's one of the
But
things I'm really working on with a lot of my trade union clients, because I think that old school way of thinking in many ways, it's that everybody associates it with that chest beating and pound the table and stomping out of the room. And I've been certainly doing a lot of work trying to introduce more collaborative models, right? Where you can still be assertive by all means, prepare by knowing what you want and prioritizing, and show up to the table with empathy and building rapport and building trust in those negotiations. So
absolutely. But it also pays, in preparation for labor negotiations, to know the people, learn something about the people
yes,
you're going to be negotiating against.
that
To
is
the
great.
extent that you can get information about them, their family, their background. It will
Yeah.
help you form at least in a beginning opinion of who they are and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Also researching the union and where
Yeah.
they are, or the local, where they are in the grander scheme of things,
Yeah.
so that you know what they might need to have to, come to close of job on the contract. But doing research and coming in with confidence, not arrogance or hubris, but
Yeah.
confidence. Because I'm telling you, some labor people have tried to push me around.
Yeah. I
And
could
I
see.
mean, not, well, even physically now that I think about it.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, but I couldn't, the misogynist
Yeah.
didn't want me to sit at the head of the table because he said where he came from, women didn't sit at the head of the table.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Just
Oh, no,
incredible.
seriously,
Yeah,
seriously.
that's crazy.
He would be mortified if he were still alive
Yeah.
and he saw that, I think it's Liz Schuyler is head of the AFL-CIO.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to live with that.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible.
And a woman chairman of the NLRB.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now I want to circle back so it doesn't get lost for our listeners as well, because I talked about that 5W model I use, and when you focused on that who, I think that gets overlooked so often. So again, I want to really put a pin in what Beverly was saying for our listeners out there. Consider who you are negotiating with, right? Who are they likely to show up as? Who do they expect you to show up as? Who do you want to show up as? I think that who question is such an important part of preparation. And I love when you speak to confidence too, because I think a lot of times, and especially in union negotiations, people sort of conflate assertive with aggressive, and they're not the same thing. And assertiveness is just coming from a place of confidence, and that confidence comes from knowledge, and knowledge comes from preparation. So it circles right back to what you were talking about. Do that homework. And I'd love, do you prepare differently for negotiations in your personal life than you do in your professional life?
Oh, sure, because I know those people. I know the
Yeah.
people in in my
Yeah.
personal life. I know their likes, their dislikes, their personal proclivities, their fears. I know their weaknesses. I know where the bodies are buried for the
Yeah.
most. So it's different.
Yeah.
But even I've evolved. I'm not as direct with them as I
Yeah.
used to be
Yeah.
because they can't handle the truth either.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like one of my oldest friends. We've been friends since we were 4 years old.
Oh my gosh.
She said something to me, and I said, "Oh, you sound like my father. Whatever comes out of his head, comes into his mind, comes out of his mouth." And she
Yeah.
said, "So now you know where you get it from."
Oh, wow.
And it stopped me dead in my tracks
Yeah.
because I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And I thought, but now, since then, I don't say what I think all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people who know me well know I'm thinking something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's all about being intentional, right, Beverly? Like I find I've really changed as well, because I used to bring that sort of lawyer persona, I think, without even realizing it into other. And now, even from my personal negotiations, well, first, I never thought of them as negotiations. So it's
Oh.
raising that awareness to go, this is actually a negotiation. Our relationship is a negotiation, and doing the prep work. Who do I want to show up as? What are the fears that are going to be driving them? What are they expecting from me when I show up? So how can I bring empathy to the table? How can I build that trust? It is a game changer when we get more intentional about that stuff. So,
And to your
important.
point, what you're doing is so valuable because we as women tend to be more willing to be intentional,
Yeah.
willing to be empathetic, willing to do the work that may expand our horizons in connection with negotiating, whether it's labor, professional, otherwise professionally, or personally.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, I think, for more women to get involved in negotiations, labor management situations, whether it's on the labor side or the management
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, I like that a lot. No, I want to circle back, because that really kind of threw me when you said that the guy had said about women shouldn't be sitting at the head of the table. And I know you did an article, I think, called "Where I Come From, Women Don't Sit at the Head of the Table." Tell us a little bit about that. Was that the impetus for that?
It sure was. fortunately for me, I belong to a women lawyers organization that lets me write pretty much what I want to write.
Yeah.
And with unions being in the news, the media so frequently, I wrote that article. I
Beautiful.
was the chief negotiator for a large urban school district. And because the negotiations were on the school board's site, I was the chief negotiator. It was my house. So I
Yeah.
sat at the head of the table. When the man walked in and saw me it was like he was apoplectic. And he came over and he sat down. He says, where I come from, women don't sit at the head of the table. I said, well, where do you come from?
Yeah.
He said, South Carolina.
Oh,
And my father was from North Carolina.
yeah.
It meant nothing to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he took his chair and he moved me over to the side.
Oh,
And
it's
I'm
not funny, but like, for good.
no, can you imagine? And
Ah,
I'm like, you must be crazy. So
yeah.
I took my chair and I moved him back over to the side. And
Yeah.
he was just like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And we ended up because I tend to be singularly focused when I have a job to do.
Yeah.
I needed to get that contract negotiated. So I didn't adjourn negotiations. I didn't, stomp out. I permitted him to sit, the middle of the table was between us
Yeah.
so that we could start the
Yeah.
negotiations
Yeah. Incredible.
because it was that important to him.
Yeah. Well, and space, you speak, that's a really important point again for our listeners, space, right? I mean, in negotiation, I think they call it proxemics or whatever, but be intentional about the setup for the room, right? I mean, are you going to sit on opposite sides of the table? Do you want a circle? Do you want people interspersed so there aren't sides? There's a whole art and again, it just comes back to what Beverly's been talking about too. Just raise your awareness, get intentional about some of these choices.
You also have to keep in mind that what you want is not the driver because it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
So even if you want a circle, you may have to settle for being on either your side and their side because that may be what they're used to, that may be what they want. You need to think about the hill you want to die on, figuratively speaking. How important is what you're perhaps discussing or not agreeing on to the final analysis, the end of job. Pick your battles.
Oh, I love that. And we've both seen that where people get so attached to a particular idea or thing that they miss a beautiful opportunity that's right there on the table, but there's one side or the other or both are just so stuck and not allowing for that flexibility. Now, I'd be interested to know, as a labor negotiator, what's something that surprised you maybe the most about unions that you've negotiated against?
What surprised me most was how just so conciliatory and professional the building trades union people were.
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Because I wouldn't have expected that. You hear about, gruff men in, plumbers, carpenters, with their toolboxes and, just coming in, and they were the nicest people.
Yeah.
Very, I started to say gracious. They weren't gracious. They were polite.
Yeah.
They were professional.
Yeah.
They were about the business of negotiating the agreement.
I agree.
They didn't care that I was a woman, let alone a woman of color.
Yeah.
All of them were white.
Yeah.
I was Black. And some of my staff members, on the team were Black. They were fine. They were not. That was the biggest surprise.
And you're right. It's about the business, right? I find the same thing. I hadn't thought of it until you just said that, Beverly. But I must say, thinking back about some of the building trade negotiations, they're practical as well. Like they're looking for solutions, which is a very important mindset. Now, in terms of labor negotiations, if there's anything that you think needs to be changed today, what would you suggest?
I am really distressed by strikes.
Yeah.
Distressed by, when I say distressed by strikes, strikes have a role. I believe that.
Hmm.
But I know from experience that if negotiations had been started in earnest well before the expiration of the contract, the collective bargaining agreement,
Yeah.
I am reasonably sure good faith bargaining had taken place, strikes could have been avoided.
Yeah.
What we've been through with the writers' strikes and
Oh,
all that, that shouldn't have happened.
yeah.
People have suffered.
Yeah.
People have had to sell homes. People couldn't pay mortgages. People had to find work because of the strike.
Yeah.
They knew what the issues were well before the contract ended. There was no reason they couldn't have engaged in good faith bargaining to come to some solution about streaming. Streaming didn't just happen.
Yeah.
It's been out there for a while because I've been watching it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why not if they wait until like even 2 or 3 months before the contract expires, it's too late.
Yeah. No, I
Why
agree that.
not start? I say start as soon as you sign the
Yeah.
contract.
Yes, I agree. Although it takes both parties. And I think a lot, in my experience, a lot of employers in particular count on the fact that with the media and everything, everybody's going to blame the workers, and ignores the fact that the employer's not coming to the table with some of this stuff that should be obvious issues that need to be addressed. So I totally hear you on that because the costs
Workers
are high.
workers know that workers need money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Owners know that they need their workers.
Yeah.
Nobody really wins
Yeah.
because the time they spent off striking and no work is really getting done. It's a lose-lose for both sides.
Yeah. It's one of the things I often preach about because I think people, you hear so much about people who aren't really familiar who say, oh, union members are just greedy, blah, blah, blah. And when they strike, it's always about the money. They're doing it for future generations, almost always. I remember as a kid, my dad was on strike. I think for 6 months, Beverly, and we didn't have a lot of money to start with. I grew up in a
Yeah.
low rental apartment complex. And it wasn't until I was older, I appreciated all of those workers knew they would never in their lifetime make back the money they lost in the strike. It wasn't about them looking for themselves. It was about setting the stage, if you will, for next generation. So it's an interesting perspective shift.
You're right. And our backgrounds are similar. My father had an eighth grade education.
Yeah.
At one point, he worked 3 jobs to take care of his children,
Yeah.
his family, really. And I have the utmost regard for the labor movement, but I've seen both sides.
Yeah.
I've represented labor, I've
Yeah.
represented management, and I'm an arbitrator.
Yeah.
So, I've
Yeah.
all 3 sides, and I'm like, okay, there's a better way to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And ADR is a great way to do it. And I'm
Yes.
glad to see. I mean, I think we've still got a ways to go to get people fully engaged in that process. And I'd love your insights. What do you see as sort of the key skill, especially as somebody who's done both sides? You've been the neutral, you're doing ADR work. What do you think are some of the key skills or hallmarks of a great negotiator in your experience?
I think effective negotiators have to keep an open mind
Yes.
and not come to the table or to the table wherever you're meeting with a preconceived notion of what should be done and how it should be done.
Yeah.
The final result. You may be tempted to put your thumb on the scale,
Yeah.
but you need to keep it off to see what the parties want.
Yeah.
You may think but until you hear from them, you won't
Yeah.
really know.
Yeah.
And you may not know when you hear from them because they may not be serious about what they want.
Yeah.
It may be a smokescreen for something else that they want. I've learned that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got to know what you're dealing with. You got to know the parties you're dealing with and pay attention.
Yeah.
But keep an open mind and take copious notes.
Yes. I love it. And any tips for dealing with bullies? I'm sure you've seen your share of that.
I was not negotiating a contract. I was working as a labor relations specialist. And one of the female attorneys who was handling a grievance, the union's lawyer spoke to her very harshly, and she cried. I was
Oh,
mortified for her.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I took her to the side and I said, okay, listen to me. You cannot cry in front of these people. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? What are you thinking?
Yeah.
It's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You need to pull yourself together. And I had heard her talk to her husband about something, and she was giving him what for. So I knew she had it in her.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. I said, they will never take you seriously. If you feel like you have to cry, I get it. But go to the ladies' room
Yeah.
and just stay there until you can pull yourself together. You cannot start from a position of weakness or let them see you as a weak opponent. They will see you as an opponent. They cannot see you as a weak opponent,
Yeah.
because then they will bully you. Then they will think they can take advantage of you. I don't let people treat me badly. And
Yeah.
by that, I include, if you come into a negotiation and you start cursing, especially using certain curses,
Yeah.
oh, I will stop you.
Yeah.
I will stop you and I will tell you, if you
Yeah.
continue down this path, we will not be negotiating.
Yeah.
So now you need to either conduct yourself professionally or this is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no reason.
Yeah.
How can
And
we
you
be serious?
and you raise a great point there. And again, for our listeners, sometimes walking away from the negotiation is the appropriate response, right? Don't continue to bargain past the point where it makes sense for you anymore, either because of the way you're being treated or because you've lost control and you're making concessions beyond where you want to. And I like when you use the word opponent too. I like that you're calling that out, because I think we are so conditioned to see these exercises as win, lose. It's the other side, all of our languaging around it, especially in our legal system. And I look forward to the day when we can start shifting our mindsets away from that, because and I was guilty of it. My gosh, for like early in the career, believing that was the only way to success. But when we can open up to get that more collaborative approach, like you were talking about with the building trades, where you come with respect, where you're looking for collaborative solutions that work for everybody, you get those better outcomes. So
Now, are you familiar with collaborative law?
yes, it's a new
I
way.
think that I would love to see that adapted
Yes,
to
yes.
labor negotiations.
Yeah, and across the system, our system's slow to adopt it, and I think maybe it's just time, and we need the shifts, because I think a lot of the law firms are still run by that traditional and let's call it sort of older white males who bring that old approach to the table still. So I definitely am looking forward to that shift coming, and I can't
I'm
believe how quick
learning.
our time has gone, Beverly. This has been such an interesting conversation. I could
Thank
keep
you so
going
much. I've enjoyed it.
for hours with you. And I normally like to end by asking, what is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've had in your life? We talked about mindset earlier, and it doesn't have to be about negotiation, just anything in your life that was kind of a profound aha moment that changed how you think or show up.
When I started down this path that caused me to write my books,
Mm.
I was stricken. It was 2008, the Great Recession,
Oh, wow.
and there were men in three-piece suits on television talking about how they'd lost their jobs and how they were looking for work and how they couldn't take care of their families. And I thought of my father, his eighth grade education, and that he worked three jobs to take care of his family. And I sat there and I said, they're not doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I can help them.
Mm,
That was
beautiful.
my aha moment.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to find sponsors to buy books so that they can donate
Yes.
to underserved communities.
I love
And
that.
I will donate webinars based on the book
Yeah.
to the people
Yeah.
they donate the books to.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the room when high level employment decisions are
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
And people have no clue what they don't know.
Yeah. Yes. I love that mission, Beverly. I think that's gorgeous, actually, about the sponsorship. I think make sure you keep getting that out there. And where can people learn about you, Beverly? Where can they go to find out more about you and what you do?
They can go to www.youremploymentmatters.com. I have a podcast, which is available on wherever podcasts are available, Apple, iTunes, Spotify.
Yep.
It's Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. I've been fortunate enough to interview a number of people with very interesting careers, some who have gone to college, others who have not.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful.
and they're all across the country. I purposely tried to make it as inclusive and as expansive as possible. Utah, California, Florida, Ohio, Panama. It's just been a fantastic
Amazing.
journey.
And I love that title, Your Employment Matters. That's so good. And we'll make sure to put that in our show notes as well for everybody so that you can reach out to Beverly, and we'll make sure to include the book title. Absolutely go get that. And if you're somebody who would be interested in sponsoring, make sure you reach out to Beverly as well. I think that's a beautiful idea. So thanks so much, Beverly. It's been such a treat having you. We're going to have you back so we can go even a layer deeper.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And for our listeners out there, I'm sure there was a lot of value here in this episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already, and give the gift of sharing. Share this with anybody. I mean, our employment is so much a big part of our sense of identity and our lives. You know, heck, in many ways, traditionally, we spend more time at work than we do our waking hours with our loved ones. So definitely get that message out there. And before we sign off today, just want to share a few ways we can work together. If you happen to be looking to up-level your negotiation skills, I've got everything from online to group to signature, mastermind, VIP experiences to help you better leverage your innate power so you can get more of what you want and deserve in life. Check out our website if that sounds interesting at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And that is a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth, negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.